Hey guys, so I wanted to show this build not because I think that it's gonna be meta or it's underrated or anything like that. It's just a fun build that I enjoy playing. I think there are variations that could be a pocket strategy for a competitive team, because what this build does is something that can be used in competitive. But as far as like moving you up in Storm League, I mean, it might get you a couple cheesy wins. This is not a serious game. This is not a serious build, but I'm allowed to have some fun builds and videos here and there, I personally believe. So the purpose of this build is to be a solo laner. You generally are going to be a solo laner, and you are going to be doing what you can against your enemy laner to stack Savor the Flavor as much as you can before team fights. What this is going to do, let me explain a little bit about what this talent does, and then I'll explain a little bit about what this build is supposed to do. So, Savor the Flavor is a talent that says when Devour hits a hero, Devour is a 20-second cooldown that heals you for 20% of your health. When Devour hits an enemy hero, which is a point-and-click ability, so it should be super easy to land, you will gain 8% of your max health and mana over 4 seconds. But hitting heroes with Devour increases your health regen by 1.5. This is an infinitely stacking quest that you can have as much of it as you want. So generally I like to pick this Stitches build on a 2-lane map versus a team versus a hero that's a melee hero, that I can get this stacked every 20 seconds. I can get one stack of this talent. It's a great way to heal your health back up with just using Devour on an enemy hero, but also using Savor the Flavor allows you to heal more than a fourth of your health every time that you cast Devour, and also gives you back the mana that it took to cast that ability. So what this build does, the whole gimmick is to build that up as much as possible and to be one of the most annoying forces in a game. What I mean by that is Stitches is the highest base health hero in the game. The only person that beats Stitches in health after taking a talent is Varian. After taking Taunt, he beats Stitches' base health a tad, and there are a couple other examples that can have higher effective health through means of armor or health increases, but Stitches has the highest base health. He also has the highest base health regen in the game, because of that high health. But you can also increase your regen infinitely with Devour. I mean, I guess it's technically not infinitely, it's just that you can increase it as long as the game goes on and you can finish those quests. So that's basically the gimmick, is that you're gonna be this huge force in a fight. And did I really miss all those 3 gems? Well, whatever. You're gonna be this huge force in a fight that's just gonna be annoying the enemies as much as possible with your high health regen, and just not letting the enemies really do anything that they want to do. You can double soak okay in this build, but that's not what it's meant to do. You're meant to stack as much as possible and just be annoying in fights. And you're going to be looking for hooks here and there, but that's not the purpose of this build either. If you get a hook, awesome. If you don't get a hook, no worries, because your job is to be annoying. You don't really do a lot of damage in this build, you just have a lot of survivability. So, let me talk about what else you have to take in this build to make it work. So, what you're going to be taking in this build is you're going to be taking Savor the Flavor. You're going to be taking Playtime to reduce the cooldown of Savor the Flavor so you can get more stacks. Then there are 2 variations of this build. The first variation is against heavy backline, which you're going to be taking Blight, which means that your Vile Gas is going to heal you, and you can have enemies who have Vile Gas on them receive less healing. You're going to take Pulverize, which is doing 80% slow to the enemies, again, just annoying them. And you're going to take Lacerate to apply Vile Gas to everyone that you hit. That's against range teams. Against melee teams, you're going to be taking Digestive Juices instead, where you can lower the damage of one of the enemy melee heroes. So, for example, let's say Kerrigan is going to be jumping in and trying to make a play on our backline. I can reduce her damage by 50%. And she won't be able to do anything for 5 seconds. And then I can still do whatever I want at level 13, level 7 to gain more value. Level 20, you're going to be taking Second Helping no matter what build you go. Second Helping is going to allow you to get 2 charges of Devour, stay alive through almost anything, And it's going to lower the cooldown of your heroic ability whenever you use your Devour. So you'll get more Biles or more Gorges. I generally take Bile, but I think the actual pick for competitive and for Storm League will most likely be Gorge. I don't know. I get so bored of Gorge, so I take Bile. So this solo lane Stitches. Early game, you want to get as many stacks of Devour as possible. You want to double soak if you need to for your team. And you want to look for a couple hooks here and there when you're near your team. But otherwise, that's your early portion of the game. When you reach mid portion of the game, you're going to be looking for some hooks on the enemy team. And you're going to be looking at just assisting your team and leading to a couple kills. You're going to want to be as annoying as possible during team fights. While your team is getting work done, you want to just distract the enemies and be as annoying as possible. When you start reaching the late game, you're going to be wanting to make some major plays with whatever your hooks are, as well as forcing fights the enemies don't want to take. And that's about it for this playstyle of Stitches. Early game, double soak, get stacks. Mid game, be annoying. Late game, make fights the enemies don't want to take. And that is how you play this. It's a solo lane build, even though you could potentially play the same playstyle as a main tank. The reason that I play it in the solo lane is because it allows you to have a tank that's a little bit more dynamic than Stitches. And it also allows you to have a little bit of an easier time stacking your quest, because generally in a solo lane you're against someone like an Imperious who you could just walk up to and just bite every 20 seconds, getting a crazy amount of health regen. So I take Bile because it kind of does that late game thing that I wanted a little bit better. It allows you to force fights that the enemies don't want to take. You can go in, you can hook someone, you can immediately Bile, making it to where they're slowed on their way back to their team, and you can zone out the enemy team from their team, forcing them to go, wait, if we fight, we're going to be fighting into Bile, and if we don't fight, we're just automatically losing one member of our team. Where if you gorge someone, the enemies have their choice of, hey, we can just engage on them right now, because their Stitches is distracted basically as long as as Gorge is going out. So I would prefer, if you are going to take Gorge in this playstyle, you're going to use it more just as a cocoon rather than an actual let's pull them into your team. So again, right here, just doing damage, basically being an unkillable force for my team. And you can see, like, my health bar is barely even changing. I have a lot of health and a lot of regen. So right here, I gorge I hook, and then I immediately use Bile to slow them on the way back to safety. And it's really easy for me to body block the enemy team with Bile because they're all slowed and I'm not slowed. I'm actually moving faster. So it's super easy to body block and force these fights that the enemies don't want to take. Then I'm just regenning and gaining a lot of health from it. So it's really easy to play this build out and just be super aggressive. There are a ton of downsides to this build, which is why it will never be a meta build, but it is a fun pocket pick here and there. Yeah, that was a bit dirty. I did see him start backing here, but yeah, it's a bit dirty. But again, you still get the hook benefit of it. So why would you want Stitches instead of another Bruiser is what a lot of people are probably going to be asking. Well, the first major reason why you're going to want Stitches is he has this high health pool, so he's going to be really hard to deal with. He can survive in a lot of situations, and Hook is a really great tool. Having your tank be Stitches, while you gain those utilities, you lose a lot. Some of the things that you lose is you lose a tank that can engage on their terms, where Stitches, you have to rely on an unreliable ability to engage, which is Hook. You're not always going to be able to land Hook. So you can't really rely on Hook to be your engage tool. So you can have a Diablo who can engage more reliably, and then you have the Hook as a, hey, if this lands, awesome. If it doesn't land, no big deal. We didn't lose out on a tank. You also have a tank that has no escape. So Diablo could easily charge onto a minion nearby the fight to get away, or Joanna can press trade, or Murden can jump away, or Nubrak can jump away. Like, most tanks have an escape. Stitches does not really have an escape, especially if you go Gorge. So drafting Stitches as a main tank is rather risky. Drafting him as a solo laner, the only thing you really lose out on is what many of the bruisers in this game bring, which is damage and survivability. You don't really bring the damage to your team, but you definitely bring the survivability, making him a pretty decent bruiser. And so I actually personally like running him as a bruiser more than running him as a tank. So level 13, if you go with this, that 80% slow is very, very strong. It's kind of like Rhaegar's 90% slow on his totem, but it's very, very strong. It doesn't last quite as long as Rhaegar's, but it's still on a lower cooldown and it's easier to land. You can see again, I use Bile whenever the enemies have a long path to get back to where they need to go, to force those just awkward fights that they don't want to take. Now, this is not a serious game. This is a non-competitive game where we've got a few GMs on our team and the opposing team probably doesn't have any. So don't take this as an example of, hey, you guys should be playing this build. It was just an example of a game where I was playing this build and I didn't have a lot of examples in recent patches. So I was just like, hey, I figured I would show it in this game to kind of show what some of the individual pieces can do. But it is not an OP build. When I say it doesn't do any damage, I'm pretty serious. It does not do very much damage. Like, your numbers will probably look pretty good. As far as like the damage numbers here, it'll look something similar to what a bruiser would normally do. But that's AoE damage that's not necessarily going where you want it to go. So don't pick this for damage. You pick this to be annoying, and you pick this for like lucky hook kills, and that's about it. So this build, I should have taken Blight if I was going to take both of these talents. I think this game I wanted to take the level 16 digestive juices and ended up misclicking if I remember correctly. And again, you can use Bile and literally just go into their backline, slow everyone, and just walk around them. And if I had the other talent at 16, I would have my heal back. I would have had my heal back before, and then I landed a good W, which this W reduces the cooldown of your E. So I'm able to just heal again off of that, and I can stay in their backline for so long. I'm distracting 3 members of their team right now, as my team is just taking their keep. And it's relatively easy to stay alive here, especially if you get the lowered cooldown from digestive juices, which says hitting an enemy hero at Devour reduces the cooldown by 5 seconds, reduces their damage. So if you have this, you can survive for a really, really long time. Or if you're going W build and you're applying Blight to everyone, then you're healing off of that as well. So both versions of this build, I did the incorrect version of both builds, but both versions of this build have so much more survivability than even what you're seeing right now. And it allows you to just distract huge members of their teams. This is how I normally play out this build. I go for a hook, I Bile and run to their back line. I try to distract as many of them as possible as my team is killing the ones that are trying to run away while they're slowed in Bile. And my team usually gets a few kills before I die. And in many cases, I don't even die. I'll just buy it a few times and then just walk away and slow everyone with my level 13 talent. And then just walk away safely after distracting them long enough for my team to win the fight. It's kind of like an Earthquake Thrall build, except for you can play a lot more aggressive because you have just so much more survivability than Thrall. Where Thrall could Earthquake and then go in the backline and potentially kill one person, you're not going to potentially kill anyone, but you will distract them long enough and survive through most of what they're doing to let your team kind of run through them and do whatever they want. You can easily run this with Gorge. It's just not how I usually run it. But I think if you're playing competitive, Gorge is definitely going to be the better option. I don't know how much to preface this, that this is just a fun build. But I don't know if you guys have had just builds that you're like, I know this is bad, but oh man, like, more people should try this build out. And that's basically what this is. It's a ton of fun. So if you guys are looking for a fun build, try this one out. Again, either variation. So you're either going, I'll probably put the copy and paste in there in the description. But basically you go Blight against range and you're going to take both of these, or you're going to go Tenderize with this one, but then you're going to take digestive juices. And the reason that you're doing this is because you're going to keep the slow on whoever you're attacking, the big slow. You're going to bite someone, slow them for 45%, and you're going to keep that slow on them infinitely, basically. Yeah, I mean, the enemies are just so far behind. That's the other cool part about this build, because your survivability is so high. If the enemies are ever behind at all, the stat difference between the teams is so incredible that you can basically just walk through them. And again, I should have a heal by this time, and I don't. And that's where my build mistake is really punishing me, because this game I'm dying way more than I should. I would have survived there, and I would have been able to annoy them for much longer. But my bile still led to 2 kills, so it works, but it still could work more efficiently. And my team ends up ending the game while I'm dead here, off of that play. So, I mean, arguably you could say, oh, well, I died to lead to the game-ending fight, but at the same time, I could have survived there if I would have just changed my build around. Level 20, you always go with second helping, and another amazing talent that just synergizes with the whole build. You do 1 bite, then the next time you need a bite, you do another bite, and you've got yourself, you're lowering the cooldown of your first bite while you're still getting healed from both of these, and then you'll get a 3rd bite very soon after, and that's also 15 seconds shaved off of your bile, which you're usually starting fights with. So it's a wild build. It's a ton of fun to play. It's really annoying to deal with. This is a bad example of a replay because it's just kind of a stomp in a non-competitive, non-Storm League game. But again, it's not a serious build. Serious builds I usually show in a competitive setting. So yeah, try it out if you want to try it out. It's a ton of fun. And let me know if you guys have played this build before. And let me know if you guys do play this build, what you guys think about it. So, because I always enjoy it. It's just so hard to deal with. And if you have an enemy that doesn't realize what you're doing, you can get like 70 stacks of this before the game ends. Like, I've gone against like Rexars before where they'll just send Misha at me, and every like 18 seconds or so, even less than that with this talent, I'll be getting a stack. And I move up in stacks so fast. I get a stack like every 15 seconds on average. So it's a really, really fun build. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching. And feel free to check out my other videos. Most of my other videos are competitive. I will sometimes sneak out these fun videos though.